It's great being able to put information into variables and give them good identifiers and all that stuff, but variables aren't really useful until we do things with them. The first thing we'll do with them is just output them to the console to confirm that the value is what we think it is. Generally, our IDE defaults by opening up whatever we had open the last time we used it. So I'm looking at my old program here. The first thing I want to do is close that, and I'll take a look at my Explorer and make sure that I'm in the right project. I'm going to go ahead and put this in Module 1. It might be Module 2 for some of you, depending on the class. If I do need to create a new project, I can do that from the File menu, File, New, and pick Project. But if I just want to put a new file into the project that's open, I can either use the little Add a File button, or I can right-click on the folder name, the project name, and add my Python file that way. I'm going to give it a descriptive name, and I'll remember to put .py on the end of it. We'll use good habits, and we will start out by putting a comment block at the top, identifying what the program is and what it does. Will save you from watching me type it through the magic of video editing. I'll start out by declaring a variable called guitarist, and I'll assign a value to that of Dickie Betts. Because Dickie Betts is a name, it's a bunch of characters, I need to put that in quotation marks. That makes it a string. Notice that the IDE thinks that's a typo. And notice that if I take away those quotation marks, I get an error because Python doesn't know how to handle it if I don't say it's a string. I can highlight it and put a single quotation mark around it, an apostrophe, and that also signifies string, so it works. There are some things to be careful about when we're putting stuff in our strings. So let's say I want to add on Dickie Betts' nickname in here, which was the Ramblin' Man because he wrote the song Ramblin' Man. And I'm going to put Ramblin' with an apostrophe at the end. And Python now thinks that I'm ending my string because I started it with an apostrophe. So it trips up over that. If I put the whole thing in quotation marks, it recognizes that the apostrophe or the single quote is part of the string, not the end of the string. Another way around that is something called an escape character or an escape sequence. If I go to that apostrophe and I put a backslash in front of it, which is right above the enter or return key, that's called an escape sequence. And now, if I put the whole thing in single quotes, that escape sequence says this is part of the string. It's not some character related to ending the string. So now I can have apostrophes if I want. It doesn't matter which one I use, but you may not have a choice. Sometimes the string you want has an apostrophe and it has quotation marks, so you can use an escape sequence or two to solve that. And since that string is enclosed in single quotes, if I want to put some double quotes inside there, it's no problem. Let's go ahead and add another variable. This one will be for the year that Dickie was born. So I'm going to call this year_born, again a good descriptive name. He was born in 1943. This time I'm not putting that in quotation marks because this is a numeric data type and you can see it's shaded a different color. If I put it in quotation marks, it's a string. There's nothing wrong with putting a number inside of a string, but I can't do math with it, and I don't know if I'm going to want to do math with this or not. If it's a phone number or a social security, for example, I probably want to put it in a string because I'm never going to do math with it, and I might want to have, dashes and parentheses and stuff like that. And I'll do one more variable name, the name of the band that he was in. This one will be a string again. And again, PyCharm thinks that Allman is a typo. It's kind of annoying that it's checking my English here. I'll probably turn that off at some point. I'll use a print statement to create some output here. And as beginners, it's a good idea to just test things frequently. So I'll just put hello in there, and then I will run this program and just confirm that everything's working, that it recognizes that it's a Python file, all that. So there's my output. I don't really want this to say hello. I want it to say the name of my guitarist. So if I put guitarist in quotation marks and run it, of course it prints out the word guitarist. I want to get rid of those quotation marks, and now what I've done is I've created something called a reference. A reference means that Python at runtime is going to go look up the value of that variable and insert that in place. And remember that variables can change while the program is running, so it is going to look up at that moment in time. In this case, it's going to see that it says Dickie Betts. Let's try that. Sure enough, it successfully replaced my reference with the value of the variable. I'm going to add another output statement with just some text here to help these flow. I'm just going to say was born in. And then I'll run that just to make sure it looks the way I expect. It does. It put was born in on the next line. So I'll go ahead and write a third line, and I'll put a reference to year born. So it'll go look up what the year born value is, 1943, and it outputs it. I'd like to keep this output all on one line, so I'll go up to that first print statement, and I'm going to add that end parameter that tells it at the end of this line I want to do nothing. So I'll put an empty string there with quotation marks, and I'll test that. It works, so I'm going to do the same thing for my second print statement. This time I'll do it with apostrophes or single quotes to show that either one is okay. And it's looking good. Actually, it's not looking good. It's missing some spaces in there. I'm going to fix that. And because I'm an English teacher, it bugs me to not have the comma that's missing, so I'll add that. And that's good. I have successfully output all of this data in the way that I want it to look. It did take 3 lines of code, which isn't great, but this is just one option that we have for doing this. To explore another option, I want to get rid of this code, but it's good code. I don't want to delete it. So I'm going to highlight it, and I'm going to use Command/, or it'd probably be, I guess, Control/ on Windows, which is a hotkey for comment out this code. And it toggles back and forth, making that code into a comment instead of deleting it, and now it gets ignored. I'll label this and say this was solution 1, where we just use separate print statements. The next option we have available to us is to put multiple variables in one print statement and use the plus symbol to chain them together. So I'm going to try guitarist plus year born. Now when I do this, PyCharm is trying to warn me that there's something wrong, but let's go ahead and run it and see what happens. What happens is we get an error. It's saying something about stir not int to stir, and if we go back and take a look, what's happening is that year born is a numeric data type and guitarist is a string, right? So we've got a stir and an int. If you put a plus symbol next to an int, Python thinks you're trying to do addition, and it doesn't know how to handle adding an int to a string. So what we need to do is convert that number, that year born variable, into a string so that Python sees 2 strings next to each other with a plus sign. To do that, I'm going to call a function called str, and I'm just going to put str parentheses, and then inside the parentheses, I'm going to put year born. In other words, I want to make a string, and the thing I want to make it out of is year born. This is called a type conversion. We'll look at that more later, but what it's going to do is say, we'll take this number and make it into a string, and now add it on to the guitarist string. So let's try running it again, and this time it works just fine. I'm going to go down to the next line and try this again just to clean it up a little bit. So I'll say guitarist plus, and I'm going to put my sentence there, my phrase. And now another plus and year underscore born. I'm going to have that same issue with this string trying to be combined with an int. And incidentally, we could just go up to our year born variable and put quotation marks around it. That would make it a string and it would work. But since it really is supposed to be a number, we'll go ahead and do another type conversion. So I'll put stir and year born in it. This time we've shown that I can actually have multiple pieces of information and I can just keep stringing them together using that plus symbol. Once again, the former English teacher here will add a comma there to clean up the grammar on that. And the idea here is that I can keep chaining multiple strings on here as often as I need, or as many as I need. So if I want to just add a little bit more text onto the end of this and say that he was in a band, I can just do another plus, more quotation marks, and write my text. And it works just fine. So this second approach, this solution 2, has a great name, one of my favorite words in computer science, concatenation. So concatenation means literally putting multiple strings together. Python uses the plus symbol for concatenation, and it also uses it for addition, so we've already seen that that can cause a little bit of confusion or a little bit of problem depending on if we're using numbers or strings. We'll take a look at one more way we can output data from variables using these print statements. I'm going to start with print, and inside the parentheses before my quotation marks, I'm going to put F, literally the letter F. And inside my quotation marks, I'm going to put the name of the variable inside these curly braces. And I'll run that and see what it does. So when I use that letter F to kind of signal Python what I'm trying to do, then it lets me put variable names inside these curly braces and use it as a reference instead of the literal text. So it will go out and retrieve a value from that variable and plug it into my string. If I get rid of the letter F, or if I forget to put it in there, it doesn't work. It just prints out guitarist with the curly braces around it. So I have to remember to have that F. And the nice thing is, I can now keep typing, and whenever I want to have a reference to a variable, I just start another set of curly braces and put the variable name right inside. And when I run that, you'll see that once again it uses that reference to pull year born, and I didn't have to convert that to a string. It worked even though year born is a number. And again, I can do this as often as I want, just like with concatenation. So if I have another variable I want to output there, I can just add some text and add that band name in. This is a really nice syntax. And once again, we have a great fancy name for this. This is called interpolation. So we'll call this solution 3, interpolation. And we also want to mention that this is done with what we call an F string. So this is F string interpolation because of that little letter F that we had to put in there to kind of signal what we were doing. Again, if you don't have the F there, this doesn't work. It just treats everything like text instead of interpolating. So this has given us 3 different ways to output our variables using print statements. I can just use a bunch of separate print statements, and if I need to keep things on the same line, I use that end parameter. I can also use concatenation as long as I remember to convert my number into a string. I can just tack it on using a plus symbol, and I can tack on as many of those as I want. And then the third way is to use an F string to interpolate my data right into that string as it is output. Now, I don't particularly care which approach you use for your programs. I will say that interpolation with the F string has become kind of the standard way to do it in Python, just because it's such a nice clean syntax. It's really easy to read, when you see those curly braces that we're talking about a variable. And most people, I think, use that. I don't really care which way you do it. At this point, we're beginners, and as long as we can get what we need onto the screen, we're happy with that. I encourage students to learn how to do all 3 of these different approaches so that in any given situation you can figure out what works best for you.